Hey everybody, welcome back. It is a return to the Lab Lib Lit Lab, where we talk about the things that you can know, the things you can teach yourself, things you can work on to be a better reader. So that when you read your books and you say, I really enjoyed this book, or I really didn't enjoy this book, and then you have to talk about it with other people, you can sound like you know what you're talking about, which is the best thing that you could possibly do. So in today's episode, or this month's episode, we're going to talk about something that is a little divisive with some people, especially if you had a tough time in your English class in high school, which is symbols and motifs, right? These can be challenging because in some ways they're very open to interpretation. And as we've always said, that is okay. And we'll get to more of that later in this episode where we talk about sort of the role of the reader, because I think it is important to remember anytime you're talking about creating meaning from a book or a text or a poem or a movie or a song, that the person sort of reading it or interpreting it has a role to play in creating that meaning, right? It does not all rest on the author or the creator of the text, right? You are part of this. Never forget that. So let's get started. Let's start with symbols. So what is a symbol in literature? Well, broadly speaking, this is my definition. I might get comments from people who have slightly different definitions, and that's okay. But a symbol is usually a specific concrete thing that represents some kind of abstract concept, right? So usually in a work, the symbol appears a few times, maybe once or maybe only once. But it is a specific thing, right? So, for example, we'll do some symbols in literature, right? If you read The Great Gatsby when you were in high school, because we all read The Great Gatsby in high school, there is the famous green light, right? That green light that pops up, that it kind of, your teacher probably told you it represents Gatsby's hopes and dreams. And then maybe as you get to the end of the book, you realize that it is not just his hopes and dreams, but is the unreachability of those hopes and dreams, the elusiveness of those hopes and dreams, right? But the point is that green light that Gatsby keeps looking at is a specific thing. It is one green light. It is not green lights everywhere. It's one green light. Go to Lord of the Flies. Great book. And there is the conch shell. The conch shell is a famous symbol from Lord of the Flies. The boys, when they get to the island, they use it to call other boys to their meeting place. They have this whole thing, like whoever's holding the conch shell is the one who gets to talk. And we can give that conch shell meaning. We can say that that is a symbol of civilization and order and humanity and rules. And as long as the conch shell exists, there is still a possibility that this island of boys will be civilized. And of course, when the conch shell breaks, then all hopes for that are lost. Let's go to Rime of the Ancient Mariner. I was thinking of that because we were talking about Frankenstein in class a while back, and that comes up. But Rime of the Ancient Mariner, great poem. It's about this a sailor who kills an albatross. Bad idea. If you see an albatross, especially if you're at sea, don't kill it. But because he did it, and because his crew thought it was bad luck, he was forced to wear that albatross. And they're big birds, right? They tied up that albatross and hung it around his neck. And so in that poem, the albatross is sort of a symbol of his punishment, right? The weight of his misdeeds. And that has even passed into sort of common sort of parlance of metaphor with English to say, oh, that's the albatross around someone's neck is the thing that they did that people remember that kind of really affects the way people see them. There's the Yellow Brick Road in the Oz books, especially, of course, The Wizard of Oz, which is, again, a singular road. And it is the journey through life or aspirations or the hopes of Dorothy to get home. We just did Persepolis here on this channel, and we talked about the veil, right? The veil that Marjane has to wear, and especially how it does kind of double duty, how when we see it first, it is this sort of pressure from culture and government that she is forced as a young girl to start wearing this veil. And then later, when she returns to Iran from her time in Europe, the veil kind of takes on, at least for a moment anyway, sort of a symbol of what she thinks of as her failure, that she has not succeeded, that she has to go back. So yeah, that's what a symbol does, right? A symbol is this one very specific thing that you see a few times maybe in the story, and it takes on more meaning than just the thing itself, right? It's not just a light or a conch or an albatross. It has a lot more meaning to it. So that's what a symbol is, right? So that's sort of your first thing. Is this a symbol or is this a motif? well, okay, is it one thing or is it many similar things? Because if it's many similar things, that's where we get into motifs, right? A motif is where you get maybe repeated images or ideas or something throughout a text that help to develop a theme, right? It might be colors, might be a repeated phrase, might be similar objects, things like that. So it's not necessarily that each specific instance is important, but they kind of have a cumulative effect on the work. So let's take a look at a few examples of that. So in Shakespeare's Macbeth, there's the motif of hallucinations, that characters keep seeing things that aren't there. It's the dagger he sees before him. It's the ghost of Banquo. It's the blood, the imaginary blood on Lady Macbeth's hands, right? That could even progress into symbol territory. But these hallucinations, and they always somehow tie into guilt. And they always tie into this larger theme about how we feel, what we do with guilt and how we address guilt and how we sort of deal with the misdeeds that we have done. And Things Fall Apart. Remember Things Fall Apart? There is sacrifice is a motif in Things Fall Apart. We see it a lot. There is symbolic sacrifices that they make of animals and currency in order to appease the gods. There is the abandonment of twins to the evil forest. And of course, the murder of Echemephona, right? This danger and risk of maybe blindly following tradition is where all of these sacrifices kind of help build that up. Let's see what else we got. In Kurt Vonnegut Jr.'s book, Slaughterhouse-Five, really good book. We should do it here, I think. I'll have to talk to the management. There's a repeated phrase, right? This is a good example of a phrase being a motif. And that phrase is, so it goes. And after any character dies, or any creature dies in Slaughterhouse-Five, the narrative is, so it goes. And like I said, no individual instance of so it goes is necessarily important or vital, but it kind of helps remind us of this idea that some things, especially death, they are inevitable. They're unstoppable. It's going to happen, and they're not all meaningful. They're not all important, and they shouldn't necessarily be feared or mourned. We'll do one more. In This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Mohtar and Max Gladstone, there's a motif of letters. In fact, that's how the whole book is done, almost entirely, by letters from these two agents, the red agent and the blue agent, where they're trying to, at first they're trying to kind of taunt each other and tease each other, but as the letters continue and they get to know each other through these missives, they begin to find that they have much more in common with each other than they necessarily do with their masters, which is classic. So this motif of letters and writing kind of tells us how communication can be overcome, despite this great different set of differences. So that's what motifs do. Each individual instance of a motif might not be important, but you put them all together and you see how the motif is maybe exploring a theme that is what the author's trying to talk about. We talked about themes last time, right? It might help to set a mood. It might help to sort of put us, the reader, in the right frame of mind for what the author is doing in that moment, right? So in Stephen King's book, Carrie, he talked about when he was, in his book on writing, when he was writing the first draft of Carrie, that he noticed that there was always blood in really important parts in the book, right? There was when she had her first period, there's all these, where she, of course, gets her attack at the prom, but throughout the book, there's these moments where blood becomes important. And so when he was working on the next drafts and the following drafts, he made sure that whenever blood happened, something else important happened. And in that sense, he was kind of teaching us, the audience, to make this link between these two things so that he could maybe foreshadow things or prepare us for interesting moments in the book. So that's basically the difference between symbols and motifs, right? A symbol is one specific thing, one specific concrete object that has meaning to the text. Motifs are repeated, maybe similar or a class of things that you see throughout the text that are a little more about, again, developing a theme or setting a mood or creating an atmosphere, something along those lines. So how do these things then build meaning? Why do authors do this? Well, for one thing, it can help for an author to reinforce their big themes or their ideas, right? Remember that the author of a book, creator of a movie, creator of a TV show, songwriter, whatever, is trying to tell us this life is like this. This is what life is, or this is what growing up is, or this is what civilization is like, or this is what it means to be a man or a woman or a child or alone or together or whatever it is, right? So that's what the author, even in your barest of airport paperbacks, That's what the author's trying to do. And so a good writer is going to try to find ways to reinforce that. A good writer is going to try to find ways to continually remind us of what this theme is. And symbols and motifs can really, really help to do that. Symbols and motifs can be really good ways of just occasionally putting that thought in our head, reminding us of things, so that when we see it, we sort of reintroduce the thought into our head. Oh, yes, life is like this. That's why symbols and motifs exist. That's what they're there for. I want to remind you, if you're learning this stuff for literature, a lot of this can be used and repurposed for any of the storytelling arts. So you're learning a lot of good tools here. Thank you for sticking around. I really appreciate that. Are symbols and motifs always intentional? That's an interesting question. Again, they can be. Many authors find them as they're doing their first drafts, and they might set them up. They might even, early in their writing process, they might stumble across something, and they'll say, all right, I want this to be a symbol of that, or I want to keep using these motifs throughout the text, right? But sometimes they go back, like with the Stephen King anecdote, right? They go back to their book, and they're reading their draft, and they go, that's weird. There's a lot of blood in here. Okay, I'm going to work with that, right? And so they then craft it, and they make sure that they're there. So a lot of good writers will do that. On the other hand, sometimes the readers, because remember, we are part of this whole thing too. The readers can find symbols and motifs. We can find stuff that we cannot say for sure the author planned to put in there, right? We make meaning that when we read, and sometimes readers can notice stuff that the author didn't intend to put there, right? This is where we get to the idea of the death of the author concept that Barth has had, which is that once the book is written and once the book is out in the world, the author no longer matters. And I kind of sort of agree with this, and I kind of sort of don't. I do think we need to know about the author and who they are, when they lived, and where they came from in order to help understand the text. But I do agree that the author is not the final word on the meaning of the book, right? That if the readers find something in that text that the author didn't plan to put there, that the author didn't intend to put there, that doesn't mean it's not there. Because it is, because we found it. And we made it. And it brings me to this classic meme that pops up on Twitter and Reddit every now and again, gets me into a blind rage every now and again, which is the blue curtains meme. And I'll put that image right up here. And you can see where, the line in the text is the curtains are blue. And your teacher says, oh, the curtains represent his immense depression and his lack of will to carry on. And it says, then what the author meant was the curtains were blue. Now, this bugs me a lot for a couple of reasons. Number one, the teacher's interpretation could very well be valid, right? Is there more evidence from the text to back it up? A good English teacher won't just make that statement, throw it on the table, and move on. A good English teacher is going to tell you, I think the curtains represent this because, and then be able to give a properly justified response with more evidence, hopefully from the text. And it kind of implies that English teachers just make baseless claims. And sure, I'm sure there are some, like in every profession, there's people who are just not good at their jobs. But a good English teacher is not going to do that. A good English teacher is going to back up what their claim is. The second reason I don't like this meme is because it seems very uncertain of the author's intention, right? How do you know that's what the author meant? How do you know the author just picked a color out of their mind? Does it even matter why the author chose what they chose? And also, it kind of places the author's intention above the readers. It says that what the author intended is more important or more valid than what the reader derives. And I think by now you probably know how I feel about that. But even if it is an offhand choice, even if the author was just sitting in their room, they were typing away, and got to do it, the curtains were, and they thought for a moment, they looked around, they noticed they had blue curtains, so like, yeah, what the heck, blue, right? That's still a choice. You understand? That's still a choice. It may not be a significant choice. It may not be a story-breaking choice. It may not be a choice that holds the kernel of understanding for the entire text, but it is still a choice. And the author, by saying the curtains were blue, felt that that was right for that moment and that place. It was more right than the curtains were red or green or yellow. So, again, the meme, another reason I don't like the meme is that it kind of implies that things in literature are unintentional, that they're just offhand. And so and I tell I've had kids use the word, students I should say, use the word, oh, this random thing. I'm like, no, nothing in literature is random. Everything is there because the author wanted it to be there. The last reason I don't like this meme is because this is not how Venn diagrams work. Why is it a Venn diagram? This makes no sense. Oh, there's so many reasons I hate this. So, anyway, when it comes to symbols and motifs and other tools of meaning, I think it's really important to remember you are free as a reader to use them how you wish. Just make sure you can back it up as you go, right? If you are going to say that the ring in Pygmalion is a symbol of Eliza's relationship with Higgins, and that when she throws it in the fireplace and then goes to try and dig it out and find it again and then puts it away, right? It's a really nice moment from the play. It is Eliza kind of reevaluating the importance of the relationship. That's great. You just need to be able to explain it and back it up and justify your choice, right? You can't just drop it on the floor like that. So how can you use this in your reading? As a reader, be mindful. I think that's always good anyway, but be mindful as you read. When you see something that looks maybe suspiciously symbolic, the more you do this, the easier it is to kind of see this. Make a note of it. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Maybe when you get to the book, you're like, oh, well, okay, that teapot turned out to be nothing. Whatever. And that's fine. That's okay. No one's scoring you on this. There is no quiz. But nevertheless, if you see something that feels symbolic, make a note of it. Try to figure out what it might be. When you get to the end, see if you were right. Might be something, might be nothing. Who knows? Take a shot. Look out for patterns in a work. Patterns and repetitions. If you keep seeing birds showing up in the work, kind of pause for a moment and say, okay, what's happening when these birds show up? What kind of birds are they? How do they add to these scenes? Like the ducks, for example, in Catcher in the Rye. The ducks, each individual duck doesn't really mean very much, but Holden Caulfield, when he sees these ducks, they make him think of, just kind of living a carefree life and the life of not having to worry about all the things that Holden Caulfield has to worry about. So yeah, I think that's the best thing that you can do. Be a mindful reader. Take some notes. If you're phobic about writing in the text, and I totally understand that, just give yourself, add your phone notes or something. But be a mindful reader. Be a thoughtful reader as you go and try to pick up on this stuff. And like I said, there's no quiz. There's no homework. No one's going to grade you for this, right? So if you're wrong, you're wrong. Don't worry about it. You're fine. Now, you have homework. I said there was no homework, but I'm giving you homework. My first homework assignment in the Lit Lab, which is this. I want you to look around your home, maybe look around your desk area, if you will, and find a symbolic object. Find something that means more than just what it is, right? So I'll give you a really, really easy one. Here's the really easy one. For those of us who are married or who should be married if the law permitted it, a wedding ring, right? In actuality, it is a small worked circle of gold and maybe some other metals. That is what it is in its concrete essence. But what does it mean? Wedding rings, right? They mean a commitment to another person. They mean a promise. You hear sometimes at a wedding the pastor talk about the circularness and the eternity and the infinitude of it. But that's what it means. That's why people wear them. They say, this ring is my promise to this other person who's very important to me. And so a wedding ring is a really easy one. Go ahead, look for an easy one, and then maybe look for one that's a little more difficult. Look for one that is a bit more of a challenge, that maybe is symbolic only to you. That might be good. And then my second bit of homework, this is a 2-part homework assignment, is to look for a motif in your week. As you go about your week, as you go about going to work and coming home and going out and all that good stuff, what are some things that just kind of keep popping up? You just sort of keep seeing them. Oh, I keep seeing red cars everywhere, and I don't know why. Or I keep hearing this song over and over again. I don't know why. Or everywhere I go, there's these weird glowing-eyed crows that just sort of sit and stare at me, and they kind of caw at me from the power lines, and their cawing kind of sounds like human words in a language that humans were never really meant to understand. I wonder if that means something. But yeah, go throughout your week. Look for stuff that just keeps showing up over and over again and say, all right, what does that add to your life? If it means anything, if this were a book, what might it mean? What might it be suggesting to you, right? So that's your homework for this month. When you've done the homework, get in the comments. Let me know how it went. Let me know what you got. What is a symbol that you found that is particularly special to you? What's a motif that you experienced throughout your week? And how did that change the way you saw your story, as it were, for the week? So thank you very much for coming by. I really appreciate it, as always. I hope this has helped give you some tools that you can use as you read to be a better reader and to enjoy reading a bit more. And to sound smarter at parties. Of course, because that's what we all really want, is to sound smarter at parties. So thanks again, and I guess I'll see you next time. Stay well.